Ready?
Ready.
Cool,
Thanks.
cheers. So welcome to the BU podcast. This podcast is designed to open up professionals around their challenges, background, and have more vulnerable conversations. This week, we've got an absolute guest. So exciting, finally, to get you on. You've got so many announcements. We did the 12-hour marathon the other day. You've done the road show. Are you knackered?
Yeah, I'm also 6 months pregnant. So to promoting my book, product placement. I am knackered, but I also have like an obnoxious level of energy. So I would say me now
Such a big word, that.
is most people's like normal, and I'm maybe even more energized than most normal people would be at a normal point. So
Do you think there'd be a crash?
I mean, there's been a few already this month.
Okay.
But I think so far I'm all right. I'm keeping myself steady, getting lots of naps in.
Love it. Little naps and snacks.
Oh my gosh, so many snacks. I just ate breakfast an hour ago and I'm always like, I need to eat again.
I need to get an all-you-can-eat buffet. So if anyone doesn't know you, I've spent a bit of time with you. I think you're amazing. I think you're very real. Which is always nice to be around good people, good energy. I always love that. And I do like your events because they're very inclusive, include everyone at no judgment. And I did remember when I did the Hove Expressions evening, that was an amazing evening. I really, really enjoyed that. But if anyone doesn't know who you are, in a small summary, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Sophie Jane Lee. And I am the co-founder and director of Electric Peach Studios, which is a brand storytelling agency that specializes in businesses that want to use their impact for good. And I also work with founders to help them use their voice with more influence and impact on stages, on podcasts, in the media, if they want to write a book.
Yeah.
And my mission is driven by the belief that humans, very similar to this podcast actually, that humans are intricately messy and complex, but we live in a world that wants to homogenize, put us in boxes, pit us against each other, totally remove any of the nuance of what it really means to be a human. And as a result of that, so many of us live this half-life where we feel totally disconnected from ourselves and one another, angry a lot of the time, but we don't really know why. Like we're failing, we can't be ourselves, like we can't show up. So all of my work really comes back to the stories we tell ourselves, the stories that we tell about ourselves to the world, and how that impacts how much joy we allow ourselves to have in our lives. And then how self-expressed we can be as a result of tuning into the truth of who we really are.
That's a beautiful way of doing it. Just like mesmerised, like, yeah, that sounds amazing.
But that's a similar message to yours, right? Because that's what this podcast is all about.
Yeah, very much so. And I think it's seeing past the labels of the titles that you see, chief executive, whatever, or chief this, or I don't know, managing director, or like founders and stuff like that, where like you're seeing this person, but really behind that is a human, and every human has a story.
Yeah.
I was about to say journey then, but has a story of their own lived experience. So I kind of want to get into that for your side.
Sure.
So it's kind of like a bit like this is your life, but let's take it back. So just you've identified ADHD as ADHD or diagnosed.
Yes, but I don't really identify as ADHD.
Okay.
I identify as neurodivergent.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that there are like multiple different cross sections of that inside my brain. I don't love the labels because I got misdiagnosed a lot when I was younger.
Okay.
And it just didn't serve me.
Okay.
It's great that for others, and I totally understand why people want that diagnosis and own the label.
Yeah.
for me, it's not. It's not how I feel like I need to be. However, neurodivergent does feel right.
It does feel right. I think that it's so much better. I think there's loads of people that say, "Oh, I identify as." Like when I said, when do you identify, what neurodivergence do you identify?
Yeah.
I identify as ADHD, dyslexia. I think it's always that thing. But yeah, it's very much one of them things of one works for one works for another. People identify like this, neurospicy. I always think neurospicy chicken wing. When someone's neurospicy, I think chicken wing. I don't know why it always goes to that spicy sauce.
You're one of those chicken wings there.
One of them Nando's spices. So let's talk about your childhood then. Tell me what was growing up like.
It was, in many ways, very tough.
Okay.
And beautiful, which I can now really only see having done quite a lot of healing around the trauma that I experienced when I was younger. It's hard to know whether that was because of being undiagnosed neurodivergent.
Yeah.
And probably I would have had a tough time anyway. But it was then layered on with the fact that my parents went through quite a messy divorce.
Okay.
Around about the same time that my brother died. And that was when I was 3, 4. And that was really disruptive.
Did
in
that all
every
happen
way.
at the sort of the similar time then?
Yeah, pretty much. So my dad left my mum, and then my brother died a year later. And so it was just this really, but in the period of that time, he was very, very ill in hospital. So there was this year of my mum and dad being in the hospital all the time, but they weren't together anymore. It was a very messy breakup. And I was 3 and kind of just left to like float around.
Yeah.
As you know, as much as they tried their hardest to not have it impact me, it's impossible for it to have not impacted me. And that was probably the first time that I started to feel like I wasn't worthy enough, because I didn't really understand what was going on. And I do remember being really angry and jealous about the fact that my brother was getting all of this attention and I wasn't getting any of this attention.
Yeah.
So it was a very confusing time and very, very painful. And William's death is by far the most disruptive thing, the most painful thing that's happened to my family in general. And I think for my parents, you never get over losing a child. And add on to the top of that the fact that they were going through this really messy breakup, just was a shit show, honestly.
What kind of like going from that then, because that is probably one of the most traumatic things for anyone to go through. How's that has that now really affected you in your life with things like that, with potential triggers, or do you see that as you've dealt with that and healed from that particular part of your life?
I think I don't really get triggered. I think probably because I've dealt with a lot of things in my life that are quite big traumas, capital T trauma, I think they call it in the cool therapy world, that I don't get triggered by stuff. I might get upset by it, and I don't think that's the same thing as what people are talking about when they're triggered. What it has done, which has been really interesting, because now I'm pregnant for the first time. Yeah. Well, I'm not pregnant for the first time, but I'm pregnant and it's continued to stay pregnant for the first time. And because my brother was his illness was caused at birth. Right. So he was suffocated at birth. So he died from brain damage that wouldn't have happened had he not have had this traumatic birth. Right. And so there's definitely a lot of residual fear and trauma that I'm working through in the lead up to giving birth, because my brain is, that could happen again, and all of these stories. Of course. And at the same time, I'm super aware of it. So I'm working with people on how to process that. Really trying to notice when that comes up for me and not project that into the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
My doula said something about it being it having the potential to be really healing to go through this birthing process, but it has been challenging, and it's been challenging for my mum as well. And
correct me if I'm wrong. Does that sort of conversation come up from your mum worrying about anything like that at all? And you've had that sort of open conversation, because that must be, like as you said, like that's your brother. So and you're going through that, and obviously you'd be amazingly proud of you and like where you are now and stuff like that. But there must be an element of you, like an open conversation with your mum, where she might feel maybe anxious about, obviously, if that kind of element.
Well, we actually had a bit of an argument at the beginning. Well, not an argument, but where I called her out on how I just felt like she wasn't being very excited when we told her that I was pregnant. And then that led to a conversation about her fears. Right. And I understand where she's coming from. So yeah, I have a very open relationship, an honest relationship with both of my parents. So we will always, if there's ever anything in the space or ever anything that feels a bit sticky, we just talk about it immediately and do our best to clear that. And it makes sense that she feels like that. And at the same time, I found that quite challenging, because it's also my trauma, and navigating her fears and anxieties at a time where I just wanted to be excited was quite challenging.
So tell us a little bit about, obviously, going from that then. Let's talk about like your childhood, actually, like going to school and stuff like that. What was your growing up like then for you? Was going to school? What was just kind of school reports like? And was it, because I find you, you probably have correct me if I'm wrong, your ADHD is, or neurodivergence, should we say, is kind of hyperactive and inattentive.
I'm not inattentive at all.
Really?
I am.
I'm surprised at that, because I think I can sometimes sort of see you in your deep thoughts, but you're all hyperactive way all the time.
This is where I think I probably, and again, I haven't been diagnosed nor will ever get diagnosed for this, but I probably have ADHD. Okay. And I will be inattentive about things that I'm not interested in. Okay. So if I'm not, like when my husband will talk to me about stuff, sometimes I find it impossible to listen to him.
You're like this, but really you're thinking about your lunch.
I'll actually just say to him, like,
bored.
I'm bored of what you're saying.
At least you're honest.
And it's usually because he's telling me the same thing for the 500th time. So, I mean, I guess maybe I am inattentive. It's just that I have very carefully curated a life where I don't really ever do anything that I don't find interesting. So I generally don't switch off from things. But like, if I'm watching TV and I find it boring, I'll switch off and what have you. But I kind of feel like that's normal in general.
Depends if it's interesting. I've always found that when, like, even if we're like, we're really excited or trying to get our food, I personally eat my food in the intro of a film in the first 10 seconds. I'm like, and then I'm like, it's taken me 5 or 6 minutes or 10 minutes to find the thing that I want to watch. And when I find it, I eat my food within the first 20 seconds. And then I'm not even at the beginning of the first film.
You eat all of your popcorn before the credits are finished.
And drank the drink before it even starts.
And then you need the loo. And then but hyperactivity. Yeah, and again, I just have a lot of energy. I will always push back on any of these kind of labels or like blanket statements about things, because what I know for sure is that I am a very unique person, and everyone's unique. Everyone is unique. But the way that I think, the way that I operate is, I've never really met anybody like that before. And that benefits me more than anything else. Like on the whole, it is what has allowed me to be 6 months pregnant, write a book, publish a book, go on a tour of the whole UK, be on national radio, national press, and run a 6-figure business, and still be here today. But when I was a kid, and one of the things that I experienced that definitely comes from neurodivergence is my memory is really bad. Okay. Like really bad, as in people will say to me, oh, do you remember that thing that happened a year ago? And I have absolutely no recollection of it. It's not even like a blank. It's not even like a missing pieces. It's like nothing. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I have that for most of my childhood as well. Like I don't really remember any of it. So I can tell you what I can remember, but most of it is just like a black hole. Like there's just nothing there when I try to recall it. But my report cards, I know because I've read them since. And they were all things like, this is probably what yours said. They were like, could try harder, would be exceptional if only applied herself, doesn't, loves to disrupt or something. Things like that.
Easily led.
No, I was always the leader.
You was the leader.
But disruptive is probably more like it. And I also got kicked out of ballet when I was 3 for being unavailable for instruction. Oh, wow. And I think probably unavailable for instruction is quite a good way of...
when I hear instructions, la, 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 so, it's just so tough.
No, I don't think I'll do that. I think I'll do the opposite of that, which is obviously really annoying and petulant. So that was it. And then I've watched videos of myself back recently when I was younger, and it was really interesting to see this group of kids that I grew up with, some girls, some boys, and I was like the most rambunctious, like boisterous one of all of them. Like the boys and me all had the swords, and the girls were sort of sitting there nicely, and I was like running around. And as soon as I saw that someone had a video camera, and you can really see it as well when you're watching this back, I'm like performing for the video camera, and like but like by far the most sort of what you would typically associate with a boy is what I was like, just like hugely energetic and boisterous, and like didn't really know the volume of my voice, didn't really know my own strength, and hurt myself a lot. There was
quite clumsy.
I'm not now, but it was more like the fact that I would move at such pace that I would just bump into things or fall over because I was moving quicker than what my body. So I think I was only like 2. My mum said that social services came to the house because I had to go to the hospital multiple times in a row, quite close together, because I had cut my eye open or like bust my lip or something. But it wasn't because I was being abused. It was because I just kamikazed around everywhere and just like banged off of things. Yeah, exactly. So I would say that it wasn't clumsiness maybe, but it was more like just ridiculous energy that couldn't be contained.
What kind of like going into like school, what actual school, so we're talking like maybe like, I don't know, 10, 12. What was you like then?
Really depressed.
Really?
By the time that I had got to secondary school, because my dad moved to America when I was 11.
Right, okay.
And that for me was the ultimate rejection.
Was you? So I think you said earlier, but just for the podcast, your sort of mum and dad were together till 3.
Yeah.
Broke the divorce at that point. You had the challenging, well, I say challenging, but the traumatic time with your brother, and then was it your stepdad that moved away, or is it your actual?
No, my dad.
Your actual dad.
My mum and dad divorced. My dad got married again, had a son, and they lived not far away from that point until I was 11. And I would go there half of the time there, half of the time at my mum's. And I've always, and still am, really close to my dad. So it was just the ultimate rejection when he moved to California. So really, really far away. And I've spoken to him about that since, and he's like, well, I don't know why you thought it was a rejection, because I told you that you could come, and you know that I've always loved you, and you know, and he did. He came back every year for my birthday. It wasn't like I don't want to give the impression that he just like abandoned me, because he didn't. But add in RSD, and then being 11 and having quite a lot of trauma, other traumas that I don't really want to talk about, but there was a lot of trauma up until that point. Of course I felt abandoned when you're going to move to the other side of the world. So that really was a trigger, plus probably going through puberty to a deep depression, deep,
really
suicidal, horrible depression.
I was going to say, because like you're kind of reliving, you're talking about when you was 3, the potentially you may feel the abandonment then, or the breakup, however that you may feel, and then again pretty much having a trigger at 11, your dad leaving again, where you're then suddenly it's the one at 3, the one at 11, even though you're kind of, you know what it's like. I think when, I don't know, for me sometimes when I am around my parents, like I feel like I'm the child again still, even at 38. They can say one comment, one thing, and it's like an elastic band being pulled back. Like my mum had a go at me the other day because I put the washing in with all the colours and the black and whites. Because she's 75, she's very old school. But I froze.
Do that.
Yeah. Whoops. But I froze. I literally froze, and I broke down in tears because I just clammed up. I've done it wrong again. And you know what you're getting, like you're too much, you're too sensitive, you're doing it wrong. Why'd you never listen? Suddenly, I think it's up to 28,000 roughly negative comments growing up as a neurodivergent child.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, exactly. And I think that was definitely it. Plus, my dad, when I was an adult, so when I was in my 20s, my dad moved back to the UK for about 3 or 4 years and then moved back to the US again. And I had another experience of it again then. And so I do think it is that sort of trigger or that mirror of being that 3-year-old child feeling completely abandoned, and then that coming up again and again. And abandonment issues have definitely been a huge thing for me, a huge story that I've carried through my life. But at that time, it was carnage. My teens were really, really difficult. I just went completely off the rails in pretty much every way.
Really?
At school, I did to a degree, but I've always been academic, so I still did really well. I've always done really well in academia. But on the inside, I was destroying myself, and then in my private life, I was destroying myself. And just anything I could do to punish myself, I would do it.
Do you blame yourself then for like back then you're saying about being younger, the teenage years, anything to just distract? Did you blame yourself for your dad leaving then?
I probably did. I don't think I had the ability to articulate that at the time. I definitely don't blame myself for anything now, but that's taken a lot of work.
Yeah.
I did hate myself. Like I hated myself with like and it's really heartbreaking. It's really sad to think of that, or to even looking at pictures of myself back then and seeing this sad, lost little girl. But yeah, I thought I was a piece of shit. So, and as a result of that, put myself in so many dangerous positions with like really, really, really horrible people, and like particularly horrible men. And was in very dangerous and like very traumatic situations a lot as a result of this. It was just self-annihilation. And I also tried to kill myself several times. So it was like, that didn't work. But okay, fine, if that's not going to work. And I was like fantasizing all the time about how I could die. Or I would even fantasize about going out into town. I lived just outside of Watford, which is, no offence if people are listening to this and they're from Watford, but it's a shithole. Yeah. And it was definitely a shithole in the 90s and early noughties. And I'd fantasize about going out in Watford and getting stabbed, and that being like my intention. But then no one would blame me for my death because I had been stabbed, rather than having to be the person who killed themselves. And especially because my brother died, I didn't want my mum to have to deal with her child killing himself, but it was okay if someone stabbed me.
That's quite dark.
It's really tough.
If I'm being like, I laugh, but probably in nerves. Nerves, but
it's the truth, and it was really, really hard. Like I speak a lot now about mental health because I really know what it's like to be in the depths and depths and depths of the hell of mental illness. It's absolutely horrific and all encompassing. And I mean, now I can't imagine that. It's like the opposite kind of person to how I am now. But it's important, I think, to talk about these things because there's so much shame and stigma around mental health, especially around suicide. And to me, suicide is the end point of the most horrific disease that you could possibly imagine, which is depression.
Well, tell me, because I'm listening to this and I want to try and piece a puzzle together. You talked about then on self-destruct mode, and I think when we are, especially for me with the ADHD, when you don't know you've got the ADHD and you're doing all these things and drink, drugs, gambling, to a point where I've done it again, and I don't know why I've done it again. Like, why have I done it
wrong with me?
And you feel broken. You feel broken.
Oh my gosh, I used to refer to myself as being broken all the time. Yeah.
So going into the teens then, you was in self-destruct mode, going to like 18, 19, you can go out and drink. I don't know if you did. Was you drinking way before then?
We're talking from like 12.
Really?
I started smoking at 12.
Cigarettes
And weed. I did my first pill when I was 13.
Wow.
I started drinking heavily at 13. The first time I was absolutely paralytically drunk, I was 13.
And do you think that's just to rebel against your mum, or to just try and deal with maybe all this trauma, the depression, just one way to actually try and cope with how you're really feeling?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of all of that. I definitely blamed my mum for a lot of stuff. She had a really horrible, abusive partner for a long time.
And this is after your...
No, they were together when my dad left, which was another reason that I was so, what the fuck, you've just left me with this absolute insane human being. And I think that the drink and the drugs was a combination of genuinely not giving a shit if I died, and also feeling always on the outside. Like I never really felt like I belonged. And
Didn't feel like you fit in.
No. But no, it's not fitting in, because I think fitting in is the opposite of belonging. And maybe at the time I was obsessed with fitting in, but now I know that to fit in is not to belong. And to belong is to be able to be fully who you are and accepted as who you are, which is not fitting in at all. And I always felt like I was just this weird kid on the kind of peripheries. And because I was so mentally ill, I actually was this weird kid on the peripheries. So drink and drugs allowed me, A, to escape from myself, B, to escape from that feeling of being on the outside. It gave me access into groups of people who accepted me, but they didn't really, because we were all just trying to destroy ourselves in some way or another. And it was a perfect escape for a long time. For I would say probably about 20 years that cycle. That cycle continued.
So going into then, you mentioned earlier then about like I get it. Like I think when you don't understand or you feel a bit like drugs is available, it's exciting. Like at the time you think it's exciting. Oh, this is a new thing. It's like the shiny new object. Yeah. You then start associating yourself with people that do associate with drinks, drugs, maybe criminal activity.
Yeah.
What's that been like with relationships then for you then? Because, well, coming into relationships and what's been your experience then being in that environment, the chaotic, the self-destruct? Because I always find self-destruct people find other self-destruct people that are kind of in that remix. So tell me a little bit about your relationships then.
I definitely have been an absolute moth to a chaotic person. I'd be like, oh, you're doing all of this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I need to come along. And in a way, it was almost like I was trying to rescue them.
So
I had like a real rescue complex.
Do you have this sort of element of fixing people?
I've really worked on it. I wouldn't say I have that now, but I have always had that in the past. Yeah, like this idea of this almost like affinity with your fucked upness. So I'm like, well, I'm fucked up too, and I get it. And don't worry, I can help, and this kind of thing. Yeah. But really, I now understand that was another way of making myself feel better about myself. And my relationships were all so chaotic and painful.
Really?
And abusive. But there was one particular relationship that I was in that was extremely abusive.
And how old was you?
I'm not going to say because this person is dangerous, and so I don't ever say anything that could pinpoint the exact time of my life where.
But this relationship was
yeah.
Tough.
So this relationship was extremely toxic and went on for a very long time.
How long?
And again, I'm not going to say.
Okay, all right. I'm trying to piece the puzzle here.
I'm not. I deliberately don't talk about anything that could be obvious to link it.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
But more importantly, actually, than his behaviour was that I knew this about him. Like I knew that he was somebody who would. Ultimately, who would go out of his way to destroy me. He is the sort of person whose abuse was very, very deep and psychotic, to be completely honest with you. And I knew that about him from the beginning. I still went into it.
Did you kind of, back then, did you kind of like that kind of sort of moment, or the way of thinking? Because I always find that when I speak to people that have gone through either DV relationships, they're very similar people, that you attract similar people and you want to fix people, but then there must have been an element of you maybe like that about it.
Well, I think it was that he was really great at love bombing.
Right.
So he would tell me all of the things that I wanted to hear about myself, bearing in mind that I really didn't have any self-worth at all, and then would keep me stuck in this cycle of total like abandonment to you're the most amazing thing in the entire world and I could never live without you. And I was really addicted to the good part.
Especially if you're feeling not in a great place anyway about yourself, and you know, it's like someone going, you're amazing. Oh, yeah. Like suddenly you're getting heightened by that. So do you think there was an element of him knowing what you've been through and knowing how you felt, for them to play on to that and manipulate you to be this?
100%. I am absolutely convinced that he is a sociopath who absolutely intentionally does that. And what I learned afterwards, when I started to really unpick why I kept going back into that relationship and why I kept putting myself in that situation, was that the chemical release in your brain when you're in a cycle of love bombing, and I can't remember what the technical word for it is. It's like love bombing, and I think it's stonewalling. It's like it's really extreme. It's like you're in this kind of like the most romantic you could possibly ever imagine. Like no one ever actually ever behaves like that outside of a film experience one day. And the next day this person is going AWOL, not answering calls, not coming home for days, telling you that you're a piece of shit. And then the next day they're creating this amazing meal for you, buying you moe, telling you that you're the best thing in the world. And then the next day they're like, so it's this constant cycle of like extreme highs and extreme lows. And that chemical reaction that is caused in the brain through that process is very, very similar to what happens in the brain with cocaine. And at the same time, I was also addicted to cocaine. Right. And he and I did a lot of cocaine together. And our relationship was, so it's not even really fair to blame him for any of this, because the destructive relationship really was the one that I had with myself. And that was a really hard thing to come to terms with. And that's not blaming myself. That's not in any way victim blaming, because DV is horrific and getting out of it is so hard. But there was also much more interestingly for me on the other side of that, a lot of work to do on the relationship that I had with myself, which was in many, many ways far more abusive and toxic.
I was going to say, because I've had the sort of the CA, well, I say cocaine addict, or no, narcotics
and Cocaine Anonymous.
Yeah. I've never done that. I've done Gamblers Anonymous, and for a good few years, and it's like the 12 steps. But I always found with cocaine is that it used to make me silent. I used to be like, everyone's having like, blah, 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 and you're sitting there and you're like, yeah, you're right, and like, yeah, I'm actually okay. I'm just it just changes that chemical reaction. If you ever think you're silent, if you ever think, oh, I wonder if I've got ADHD, I'm not saying, actually, that's wrong saying go and sniff a line. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, like, if you've ever gone through that addictions route and you've had cocaine and you're like, oh, I wonder why I've always been quiet when I've taken it. It's because of the ADHD and the chemical imbalance in it. But that's another story. But tell me then, that relationship, we're not going to go for how long. Did you have family and friends that maybe potentially were around you at that period of time? And could they see what kind of the difference in you as a person? Like, we'll change when we're with people, we get in this bubble and it's all amazing. And then it changes us as a person because we're trying to be someone that we're not.
Yeah, definitely. They could see that things were not right, and they tried really hard to steer me away from.
You didn't see
that.
it.
I did see it. I just didn't. Well, it's not even that I didn't want to, because I definitely saw it. It was that I guess in a way I was addicted to the relationship. Really? I was addicted to the drama of it all. And it really took, and I'm not going to go into details about this, but it really took some very, very dramatic things to happen for me to like wake up and be like, okay, I need to get out of this.
Because I was going to ask you, how do you get out of something? I'm not going to go into a specific, just mention then, but how does someone like that, or in general, if anyone's listening, how do you really break the barrier?
It's really hard to do, because if you stand up for yourself, then they will find whatever way they can to pull you back in again. In the end, what I had to do was to make myself pathetic to him, like make it so that he felt like he had won and that he didn't need to play with me anymore. Because having the like final word, so to speak, which I think is like probably what people try to do, and like when they have nasty breakups, which happens to us all, wouldn't work, because then there would come the punishment. And I genuinely, like, I still, and this is like, we're talking a really, really, really long time ago now. I still worry that he's going to come back into my life. Do you feel
like that, like just that anxiety of it? I always find that an ex.
Well, anytime I read about a woman being murdered by their ex, like, it kind of
really,
because I absolutely would not put it past him to kill me. Like, he's dangerous. That's why I'm really, really careful about not giving any details away, because
you don't want it to be used against you.
No.
Yeah.
And luckily, to be fair to him, I've had loads of really crazy relationships, so it could actually be any number of these crazy men that I've put myself in situations with, and really, and that's, it's, you know, it's, we can laugh it off, but it's really sad, because it comes back to the fact that I didn't believe that I was worthy of love, and the fact that I didn't believe that I was lovable, and then also that I was addicted to that drama, and now I'm married to somebody. On the whole, we have a great relationship, and it's very steady and very normal, and I don't think I would have ever allowed myself to have that back then, because not just because I didn't believe I was worth it, but also because I would have found it boring. Anytime that a nice person, anytime a guy was nice to me, I'd find that really boring. I'd find it would give me the ick. His niceness would give me the ick.
Because I think sometimes as well, when I hear about people that are neurodivergent, especially with ADHD, is that because you've gone from a lot of trauma, you feel like that's just what you deserve.
Yeah.
That's what you deserve, is to be made treated like shit, or because you feel shit within yourself. So you go back to it because you think, well, that's the only route I didn't really know, is to be with someone that is potentially in a deep love bomb and all stuff like that. And then you're going into that relationship. You always feel like, well, this is what I actually deserve. And then when it comes someone that is really nice, thinking, well, that's not what I'm used to. So I just think that like you just said, it gives you the ick. And
I think also it's scarier, because if someone who you already think is going to hurt you hurts you, it's kind of like, well, I knew it. But then if somebody who's lovely hurts you, then there's more sort of to grapple with there. Yeah. And it just felt safer to go with somebody who I'd already kind of knew was capable of doing something like that.
So going on from that then, because we've only got 20 minutes left, and I want to get into your journey now, and the actual journey. So going on from that relationship, then you did some dramatic changes to what you woke up and got away from whatever that situation is. After that kind of level of trauma manifests with ADHD, and I find that it's always there. It does manifest over a period of time. What was that next relationship like then? Because you've gone from a traumatic experience, what has happened in that relationship. What was the going forward then from that?
Then I got into multiple more of the same.
Was you using drugs at that?
Yeah,
drugs?
I was still using drugs. And then it was just a series of really crazy, horrible relationships. Until the final point where I was like, I can't do this anymore, which coincided with when I started my business.
Okay.
And
when did you start your business?
In 2017.
Okay.
And I met my then business partner, Alice, and and a lot of that is in my book, actually. The story of how I then realized what I was doing, or had like a bit of an awakening, which was facilitated by a few things that Alice said to me. Yeah. And just realizing that I have a choice. I can either continue going down this road and kill myself, or do the work and get well. And so I chose to do the work and get well.
How did you get well?
It took a long time.
Really?
And again,
therapy or
oh my gosh, it was
Narcotics Anonymous, or that element
I started in NA. It's not for me. It's not for me. I don't really like the religious aspect of
like the 12 steps.
The 12 steps, yeah. And I also don't like. I'm not a believer that we need to keep banging on about our stories. I think that just because your story is your story in the past doesn't mean it's who you are now. And you can choose your story. You can choose the story that you want to live into. So I very, very rarely talk about my past, and very selectively talk about it, because it's not who I am anymore. It's kind of irrelevant. Like people might hear it and be like, "Oh, that's really inspiring," but it's not.
You kind of wipe that. You've scrubbed that.
Yeah, and it helps that I've got a terrible memory, because literally I
don't remember it.
I'm born again.
Yeah.
And that's not to take away from anybody who still is grappling with their past. And because I was in that space for a very long time, it's just more that I've got to a point where I'm like, that's not who I am anymore. So why do I need to stay stuck in that story to prove?
That makes sense.
It's almost like I have to do it. I used to do it to prove my worth. Like, tell me I'm so inspiring, because I used to have this terrible thing, and now look at me. Whereas now I'm like, just look at me. Like, you don't need to know that I've gone through this to have respect for me. So you're very privileged, because I would never do this kind of, even in my book, I don't go to this level of detail about my past. And so, but to get to that point, I had to take myself on in a really big way. And I did every kind of therapy you can imagine. Talk therapy, of course, but then also had a shaman banging a drum and feathering me. Wow. I did all kinds of hypnotherapy, all kinds of like very deep subconscious work, inner child work, screaming into woods, like everything, literally everything you can imagine. I tried it, from physical to psychological, and just had this really intense opening to myself, I guess.
Like a cleanse, like a deep cleaning of trauma, emotions, feelings, experiences, and sort of just let that go. Yeah,
it was healing. It was like a way of looking at where there was still open wounds and really giving them the attention that they needed to be able to heal.
Do you and correct me, I'm sort of just asking you here, does that ever come up with you? Do you ever sort of, sometimes you've done all this cleansing, this authentic, beautiful person that you are now, that to get here, which is very inspiring to hear what your story is, to you open up about that sort of trauma. But do you ever find sometimes that you could be in situations of conversations with people, friends, and that it can sometimes sway in a little bit, or I always find sometimes that we can have like a hyper association moment where something like a song, if I said 9 to 5, you said, oh, Dolly Parton, 9 to 5, and the sort of jukebox head comes in. And do you ever find that ever sometimes can creep in, but you're quickly so self-aware of yourself that you're able to sort of push that away?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like loads and loads of things come in, and especially around publishing this book, writing the book, publishing this book, which has always been a dream. My self-destructive tendencies started to come back in.
So as you were writing?
As I was writing, and like to try to destroy the opportunity, because, and I think maybe it will always be there, who knows, but it was humbling. It was just like, I have not figured it out, and that's fine. And really giving myself care and attention, and actually being honest as well. And I wrote about that in the book too, of how challenging it is to go for your dreams, and how challenging it is to put yourself out there. And claim to the world, you should listen to me. I've got something to say. That's the opposite of what I've lived most of my life like. So yeah, it's definitely still challenging. There's a lot of things happening in my life all at once that are just like, what's going on? And I'll have moments where I feel like I'm not doing good enough, or I'm not worthy.
Do you self-sabotage a little bit? I was about to come to that.
Yeah, or like my I don't necessarily act on it, but my brain gets involved and can be really loud and can be quite mean sometimes. And it's just now giving myself the care rather than making myself wrong for it. But I think that's just a lifelong practice of coming back to self and coming back to the truth that, like I said at the beginning, that we're all human and we're all messy. And one of my favourite thinkers in this space of trauma is Gabor Mate. And he talks about things like addiction being normal responses to abnormal situations. If you are in pain, it makes sense that you reach for something that will alleviate that pain.
Yeah, of course.
And if you have a lifelong conditioning of not believing that you are worth whatever it might be, any greatness, it makes sense that your brain, to keep you safe, it's not trying to sabotage you, it's just trying to keep you safe, will try to pull you back into the space that you know that feels safe, even if that space isn't a kind or compassionate or helpful space. And that's more now where I try really hard to just go, of course I feel like this. Of course I'm having this experience. What I'm doing is big and new and scary. And of course I feel scared of doing something that's scary. Rather than in the past, I used to think I have to be this perfect person. I have to somehow have everything sorted out. I cannot let anyone know that that I'm scared or that I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm just like, I'm human. Like, of course I am.
Would you say then, like, we're going to come to your book in a minute and quickly touch on like LinkedIn and how you are now, and obviously your amazing journeys of being pregnant and stuff like that, and what's going to be next for you. Would you say then, after everything you've gone through, you are now the best version that you can possibly be in life?
No. I think there's always better that I can be. There's always lessons that I can learn. I am the best version of myself that I can be with the tools that I currently have.
Yeah.
But I think I always was.
Yeah.
And that
just needed to come out.
Yeah, I think I was, and I think that about people in general. I think we're all doing the best we can with the tools we've got. And we live in a world that the media tells us everybody's awful and everything is awful, and we always have to polarize everything and fight with one another about everything. But the reality is most people are just doing the best they can with the tools they've got. And when I can look back now with more tools, with more insight, I can say, well, that wasn't the most helpful way to behave. But at the time, I didn't know any of that. So I was just doing the best that I could. And now I'm doing the best that I can. And I'm well aware that, I hope anyway, that I'll live my life continuing to be curious and to learn as much as I can and to discover as much as I can. And as I do that, I'll have access to new people's experiences, which for me is the best thing, because I open my eyes to other people's stories.
Yeah.
I learn more about how I can be a better version of myself, how I can be a more compassionate version of myself, less judgmental. Like, I can be a right judgmental little asshole sometimes.
The face says it all. The ADHD judge says, the face says it first like, before. Okay, then.
I wouldn't do that. So yeah, like, absolutely. And it's something that I'll continue to work on. Like I don't think we're ever going to be a finished article. And I love that, because that is what gives me joy in life, is learning from other people and always trying to be better each time, and challenging my ego when I'm confronted with how I can be better, and my brain goes into RSD, or like, how dare you, and wants to start a story about how everyone's just a piece of shit, really, and who cares what anyone else thinks, and blah, 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 blah. Then it's a great practice to take it back and go, like, actually, come on now, take a breath, come into the body. What can we learn from this? How can we be better as a result of this? Because it's all just feedback. It's all just data. And really cultivate that sense of continuous learning as almost like a philosophy for life.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, like, do you find that now, like, because you're quite big on LinkedIn, you're very active, you're sort of got your finger in loads of different pies and stuff like that. How's that been for you with receptive to other people? Are you the person that only surrounds himself with good people? Have you had any bad experiences since becoming this version of you where you're on LinkedIn, you're doing this, you're doing that? And for some people that might feel for them that you may be too much for them. You're not. But I'm saying, do you know what I mean? Do you ever feel like that you've come up against people now that may be jealous of where you're at, and had people that are around you? Or do you kind of sort of surround yourself with only the best people? I
mean, definitely. I've definitely lost quite a lot of friends.
That's probably
in
what
the
I'm
process.
Getting at. Yeah. Is that because you've just outgrown them, or just? I
think it's I stopped hanging out with the people who do drugs a lot, because I just can't be around it.
Yeah.
I don't really hang out with people who drink a lot either. And that's not a judgment on them. No. That's because I just can't. I can't be around it. Yeah. The last year I lost a couple of really close friends quite dramatically, and it was quite painful. And it doesn't really make any sense to me even now, because the stuff that they accused me of, both of them accused me of, is completely inaccurate.
Right.
But obviously was accurate to them, so it's their stories playing out. And I think that was a case of, it's all right for you. They were struggling largely financially, and they were angry with me for the fact that I wasn't, and that my business was doing well, that I had all of these different successes. and projected that onto me. And it was quite odd.
Do you still play on your mind a little bit?
Not really, not anymore.
No.
It did for a while. But now I'm just like in the thought of, if you don't show up for me, then I'm not going to go out of my way to show up for you. Like, I'm just not doing that anymore. I've done that so much throughout my life, where I've people pleased and sacrificed myself for other people. And the whole point of this book is about standing in your own agency, your own sovereignty, and no longer abandoning yourself for other people. And I am not prepared to do that for others either. And like, of course it hurts. And of course my brain goes into story making and trying to protect me by making them out to be evil people, which they're not evil people at all. They're not bad people. They haven't done anything wrong. They're just, but they're not treating me in a way that I think is fair. And I'm a big believer in, if you've got a problem with somebody, have a conversation. Yeah. Because if you have a conversation with somebody, they don't receive what you're saying, and okay, fine, then be really mad at them, make them out like, do whatever you need to do. But these people didn't even have a conversation with me. It was just they just
cut you off and then
But then made out like I was the one that was this evil, horrible person. Right. And I'm not going to accept that about myself, because it's just untrue.
I think of all the work you've done, you don't want to be going back into
like,
that.
No, I'm sorry that you had, I would 100%, I can accept that I might have done stuff that has been hurtful, and never intentionally, but nonetheless, you come to me and you say, Sophie, you behaved in this way and it had this impact. I'm going to be like mortified that you've had that experience, and I'm going to do everything that I can to make it right. Learn from that and make it right. Like that is always, I'm in no way am I saying that I didn't do anything and they were just so unreasonable, but the way that they responded to it was really unreasonable, because they didn't give me any kind of an opportunity to have a conversation, and just made out like I was just this awful person who deliberately was trying to hurt them, which is just so untrue. And that for me now is like, if you're going to be stuck in your story, as I have been for most of my life, I cannot help you. You can help yourself when you want to decide that you're going to have a lovely life, because we can all decide that. We can.
Yeah.
When you want to decide that you're going to be somebody who has difficult conversations sometimes to then create new opportunities, i.e. saying when you're upset about something in a way that's not confrontational, great, I love that. But if you're not, then there's nothing that I can do about that. So I'm just going to wish you well, but away from me. Yeah. And I have become quite...
Your boundaries are quite... No one blurs the boundaries of you.
No, and I will be and I am also very, very forgiving, and I love my friends fiercely. So... I know that people have moments where they're not always going to be their best self, because I do all the time, and I've just told you about how much I've spent most of my life being like that. But on the whole now, the people in my life are just incredible people. Yeah. Really grateful for the fact that I've got so many amazing, inspiring people around me. And to go back to your original question, there probably are many people who think that I'm too much, and many people who roll their eyes at me behind my back, and like I honestly could not give less of a shit, because if they're going to spend their energy being in that negative, competitive space, the only person that is affecting is them.
Love that. That's good. So we've got a couple of minutes left. How quick is it? It goes so quick here, doesn't it? Talk about your book. So Beyond Palatable.
Palatable. A manifesto for unapologetic women. I think it's the
and it's designed for women.
No, it's not. My publisher told me that we needed to make it specific to women, just because it's easier to then position it in the market. Okay. You will read it or listen to the audio. And you will get so much from it. You'll see yourself reflected in a lot of it as well. Okay. It's really for anybody who's been told that they are too much, that they need to change themselves to fit in, that they need to be acceptable in some way, or that more importantly, that they're not acceptable by being who they are, so they need to be another way to fit in. And that is something that is very common amongst, as you well know, like neurodivergent people, but it's also really common amongst women, because women like day dot, girls are told that they have to be a specific way to fit into societal expectations. And anytime a woman breaks those social contracts in whatever way that might be, they get seriously punished for it. And that has been going on for millennia in some very extreme, dramatic ways. Today, it still is like life or death in some instances. And so that is why this book is much more for like every single woman can read this, but then also anyone that's felt that way can read this. And it's more like a rallying cry for the importance of coming back to ourselves and the importance of being the spark and taking up space and really celebrating your too muchness. Because when did somebody who was just the right amount of much ever do anything that was remotely remarkable? Like, if you want to be remarkable, if you want to leave your mark on the world, like, you have to be too much. You have to be like this whirlwind crazy person that nobody understands. Like, that's just the way that it is. And I know so many remarkable people who are not letting themselves be remarkable because they're worried that their remarkableness is unpalatable. And I'm like, be unpalatable. It's so much more important that you let yourself shine in your expression of self that needs to come through you for a reason than it is that Bob down the street finds you acceptable.
Do you find that though, just to quickly touch on it, and just quickly talk about, but I think it really depends on like how far you are, like you're saying about becoming this your own voice, shine, which we all should do, but there is very much a lot of masking because of maybe labels or social acceptance, or I might say something about a hippo got a big mouth, 150 meters. I might say that in a meeting. I might say a random fact about that in a meeting because someone's told me to unmask, and then I've gone, weirdo, you're telling me, have you ever thought about dying? And everyone's like, you can be yourself. And I've said something like that, and then suddenly I'm very different to anyone else on their journey, probably very much like you've really embraced who I am, but you're then put back in that box because I've gone, hey, here I am.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't like who you are.
And I think that's why this is not just about, and also again, like there are levels. We all put on a face to meet the faces that we meet, like we all do, and that is part of being human. I think there is appropriate levels of bringing self out, and at the same time, it's not so much being your full wacky self. I want to run naked or in my glitter thong through, like,
sounds fun.
Like, it's not so much that as it is about not abandoning parts of yourself. So being true to who you actually are from a values perspective. Because also it's important to say that this isn't just about like extrovert, bold energy. You could also be this and be quite quiet and be really reflective. And, you know, you don't have to be rah, rah, rah out there. And when I talk about brilliant and remarkable, there's space across that spectrum for everybody. But what I really would love is for every one of us to wake up to the fact that weird is not a thing. There is no such thing as normal. Human beings are all neurodiverse, not neurodivergent, but they are all neurodiverse. And these rules that we all live by do not serve anybody. So if we can accept ourselves for who we are and who the myriad different ways that we are really a contradiction. So many, all of us are a contradiction, a walking contradiction. Then we can do the same for other people. So then when Tom says, have you ever thought about dying? And did you know that if you did die, and what about being killed in the hippo's mouth? And how long do you think you'd survive if you got swallowed by a hippo?
And then how many types of what hippos would actually go for you? It's an endless list.
And what would you do?
That night, I'm a zookeeper. Do you know what I mean? It's that endless cycle.
And imagine if we were all so secure in ourselves that we didn't have to go, oh, you've just broken some contract. That's weird. Because actually, why? Why does it matter? Why do we all have to be so policing of ourselves and one another so much? Because it just makes for a very unjoyful, quite boring way of existing. When really, and I think this is true of everybody, what people genuinely value, even those whose values are very different from mine, they value people who speak the truth.
Yeah.
And
so some people don't like that.
But they don't like that only because they don't allow it in themselves.
Really?
And this is anything that you don't like is a reflection of who you are and how you see yourself. And that's something that we have to realize. Just because you don't like something does not mean anything at all about the thing that you don't like. It means everything about you. And so if you don't like somebody, that is a reflection on you, not on them. And if we start to understand that and cultivate a sense of ourselves and our own self-awareness, we become much more compassionate to other people. It doesn't mean we have to be friends with them.
Yeah.
You're allowed to not like something, but you're not allowed to make that thing wrong and you better than that thing. That's where it becomes...
Yeah, but some people, come on.
Some people are dicks. Some people are dicks, but at the same time...
But sometimes they're probably masking to be a dick for that. It's their persona.
But they've probably got a shitload of trauma. They're dealing with... they're dealing with their own humanness. Even the most horrific acts from people are, again, Gabor Mate talks about this a lot, are usually because of some kind of trauma or some kind of brain abnormality, not because they're evil.
Yeah.
And so, again, doesn't mean you have to like it, doesn't mean you have to say it's fine, doesn't mean you have to be near it. You can absolutely remove yourself from it, but we would be so much better off as humans, as a collective, which we are, if we stopped always having to make other people wrong and ourselves right in the process.
So we're going to finish it there. Thank you ever so much. I love how you speak. You're so elegant, and the way you speak is fantastic.
Thanks.
But if anyone wants to learn about Beyond Palatable, is it Amazon?
You can get it on Amazon, Waterstones. You can get it at absolutely any WH Smith. You can get it at any bookshop in the world, actually. It's in bookshops all over the world, and you should, because I think it's pretty great, not gonna lie. And support female authors as well.
Love it. Thanks ever so much for coming on.
Thanks
Appreciate
for having me,
your time. Thank you. Cheers.